With a galactic crisis on the horizon, Starfleet Command would begin a quest to solve their problem. And with this desire, the Intrepid class would be born. But what do we know about this 31st, 32nd century Marvel starship design? Well, today we'll find out. Hello and welcome to another episode of Truth or Myth Beta Canon, a Star Trek web series that dives into the history of any given topic using beta canon sources and my own imagination to fill in the gaps. In today's episode, we're taking a look at the 31st, 32nd century Intrepid class, as first seen in Season 3 of Star Trek Discovery, to better understand its place in Star Trek history. Please note, I've heard many in fandom complain about various aspects of the 32nd century starship designs, and so I've crafted this story with many of you in mind, to explain away any issues that you might have had. Also, canonically speaking, this is the Intrepid class, not the Janeway class as some of you seem to think. In Star Trek Online, that's what they called this ship, simply to differentiate this one from the beloved Captain Kathryn Janeway Intrepid class design. But then again, canon always trumps beta canon, and so correctly and factually this is the Intrepid class. But of course, and as always, because this is just a bit of beta canon, all information relayed should pretty much be taken with a grain of stardust, and only considered a little bit of Star Trek fun. And so, with all that out of the way, let's begin. Starfleet Command and the United Federation of Planets had a problem. Known dilithium deposits throughout the Milky Way galaxy had begun to dry up, making what was once a vast and readily available resource slowly transforming itself into a rare and often expensive commodity. And since all starship faster-than-light travel required dilithium in some form or capacity, the galaxy was truly facing a major crisis. Starfleet Command began various projects to eliminate the need for dilithium crystals, but ultimately failed. Synthetic crystals were also developed unsuccessfully. Starfleet scientists were able to make strides in the recrystallization process. The problem, of course, being that every time the dilithium was recrystallized, it would lose some of its purity factor. And like so many other things, making a copy of a copy of a copy will eventually render all subsequent copies completely useless. But even doubling and then some the recrystallization rate usage only gave Starfleet a bit of breathing room to attempt to solve the problem. In an attempt to locate new deposits of dilithium throughout the 7% unexplored areas of the Milky Way, Starfleet Command would have its best and brightest engineers create a new class of scientific starship, and the Intrepid class would be born. Sitting at a length of 452.9 meters, the Intrepid class would be designed to be operated by 500 officers and crew members. Based on the Intrepid class design of the late 24th century, this starship class would only superficially resemble her ancestor. Like most starships of that era, her nacelles would be detached. In fact, unlike other starships of that era, her nacelles would remain detached at all times, a necessity given the far more dangerous areas this class was intended to explore. Not only that, but her secondary hull would also be unattached, making her one of the most maneuverable Starfleet vessels of her time. Many first-year cadets often are under the mistaken impression that should a starship lose power, that these detached vessel components would begin to float away. But of course, this is not really the reality of that situation. Thanks to advances in phasing technology, with all programmable matter having its own ability to contain its own power cells, meant that these detached components were really nothing of the sort, simply being detached in our universal reality, but held in place through quantum physics. And of course, after all, if floating away components were really an issue, Starfleet Command would not continue to utilize them 2 centuries later. As a result, the Intrepid class would have a standard safe cruising speed of warp factor 9, and an emergency maximum speed of warp factor 9.99975 for 12-hour increments. Like all Starfleet vessels of the 31st and 32nd centuries, the Intrepid class would be quantum slipstream and transwarp capable. Although classified as strictly a science vessel, the Intrepid class would also contain the latest advances in weaponry and shielding, containing phaser emitter arrays and torpedo launching systems capable of firing a variety of projectile weaponry. The Intrepid class's hull would also be reinforced with a newly developed alloy known as Vultanium. By combining tritanium, victrium, and neutronium at the quantum level, this alloy would not only be stronger per se than regular Starfleet hull material, but it would protect the Starship class greatly from radiation and aberrant energy anomalies that it might encounter during its mission. The Intrepid class would also be fully stocked with a variety of auxiliary spacecraft, with most, once again, being designed to aid in the completion of her mission. The USS Intrepid was launched in 3065, making her the last vessel class that Starfleet would develop for over a century. Tested near the galactic center of the Milky Way, all of the Federation was impressed by her performance. The Intrepid class was truly the most advanced starship design ever created by Starfleet. And so an initial order of 36 vessels was put forth by Starfleet, with an additional 36 more on the drawing board in the future. But unfortunately, these plans would be forced to be changed. The burn was a galaxy-wide disastrous event that occurred in 3069. Suddenly and without warning, most dilithium in the galaxy mysteriously went inert, causing warp core breaches to occur in any active warp cores. This event caused widespread death and destruction, and led to the near collapse of the United Federation of Planets itself. With most of its fleet destroyed, Starfleet Command would halt construction on any new vessels or vessel classes, consolidating their resources and preserving what little dilithium they had left. But the burn had an added side effect, basically trapping all vessels inside the Milky Way when the galactic barrier surrounding our home galaxy was irradiated and would remain far too dangerous for biological life forms to cross for over a century, stranding several expeditionary convoys sent to our own satellite galaxies in those galaxies. Sadly, the USS Intrepid would be lost to the burn, but the last vessel of the class completed, waiting for her launch ceremony in dry dock, the USS Voyager-j, would become an important starship to Starfleet and the Federation's new, post-burn playing field. Launched to help solve the dilithium crisis steadily developing in the 31st century, the Intrepid class would end up becoming a symbol of hope to what remained of Starfleet Command and its officers. So much so that when Starfleet Command began to develop a new form of travel, acquired by the arrival of the USS Discovery from the 23rd century, the Voyager-j would be the first vessel chosen to contain the Spore Drive Mark II propulsion system. And that in itself would earn the Intrepid class its valued place in Starfleet and Federation history. Thank you for watching today's episode of Truth or Myth Beta Canon. What do you think of the 32nd Century Intrepid class and the historical narrative that I've created here? Do you want to see more videos like this one? Well, leave your comments in the section below. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel, hitting that little bell icon so you won't miss a single video re-release. Want to help the channel ensure its various components don't float off into deep space? Then consider becoming a channel member subscriber or a channel patron. Both a major help that allows this channel to purchase resources and 3D models to keep it going. The link to both memberships is in the description below. Thanks again for watching, live long, and prosper.